Emily sat at her desk long after most of her coworkers had left. The office was nearly silent, the hum of the overhead lights the only steady sound. She tapped the last few keys on her keyboard, trying to finish a report before heading home. She liked these quiet hours, no ringing phones, no chatter, just focus. But tonight, something felt different. She wasn't alone. She heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, steady, deliberate. She looked up, surprised to see Daniel, her boss, walking toward her. He usually left hours earlier. He was tall, dressed in his usual navy suit, his tie slightly loosened as if the day had worn him down. He stopped at her desk, his expression unreadable. "Emily," he said softly, "do you have a minute?" Her heart skipped, though she didn't know why. He wasn't harsh, wasn't cold. His tone was calm, but something about the way he asked made her chest tighten. She nodded quickly, pushing her chair back. Daniel motioned toward his office. She followed, clutching her notebook as if she might need it, though she wasn't sure why. The hallway felt longer than usual, every step echoing. When they entered his office, he paused at the door. Then, slowly and deliberately, he closed it. The click of the latch was louder than it should have been. Emily's eyes flicked to the closed door, then back to him. The air in the room shifted. He didn't sit at his desk right away. Instead, he leaned against it, arms folded loosely, gaze steady on her dot. Emily stood by the chair across from him, unsure if she should sit or wait. She wasn't in trouble, he didn't look angry. But his silence stretched and her heartbeat quickened. She had worked here for 2 years, and in all that time, Daniel had never pulled her into his office like this, especially not after hours. He finally spoke. "I needed to talk to you without distractions," he said. His voice was lower, more personal than his usual professional tone. Emily tried to keep her expression calm, but inside, questions piled up. Why now? Why her? What could possibly be so important that he waited until the office was empty? She sat down slowly, placing her notebook on her lap, though she knew she wouldn't need to write anything. Daniel watched her carefully, almost as if searching for the right words. His shoulders seemed tense, his jaw tight, as though he had been holding something back. The quiet between them grew heavier. The office, normally a place of deadlines and quick conversations, suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. Emily noticed the framed photo on his desk. The half-empty coffee cup beside his computer, the faint scent of his cologne in the air. Every detail sharpened, as if her senses were on high alert. "Daniel," she said gently. "Trying to break the tension, is everything okay?" His eyes softened for a second, but then he looked away, running a hand through his hair. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he exhaled slowly, almost as though he was preparing himself. Emily's chest tightened. She wasn't sure what she expected, maybe a serious work issue, maybe something about the company. But the way he hesitated told her this wasn't about business. This was something else, something heavier. And in that moment, sitting in his office with the door closed, Emily realized this conversation was about to change everything. Daniel stood against his desk, his eyes fixed on the floor as if the right words were hiding there. Emily sat across from him, waiting. Her fingers tight around her notebook, even though she knew she wouldn't be writing anything. The silence pressed down, and she finally whispered, "Daniel, what is this about?" He lifted his head slowly, his gaze locking on hers. "I've been carrying something for a while," he said, his voice low but steady. "And I can't keep it inside anymore." Emily's breath caught. She had expected a difficult work conversation, maybe a layoff announcement or some serious problem. But the tone of his voice, the look in his eyes, it wasn't about business. It was personal. Daniel pushed himself off the desk and paced a few steps, running his hand along the edge as though grounding himself. "Emily," he continued, "you've been more than just part of my team. You've been different." He stopped walking and turned toward her. "Every late night we worked together. Every time you stayed back to help, I noticed. I noticed more than I should have." The room tilted slightly for Emily. She had always admired Daniel. He was kind, hardworking, and never treated her like just another employee. She had caught his lingering glances before, but she brushed them aside, convincing herself she was imagining things. Hearing him admit it now left her stunned. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Daniel stepped closer, careful but determined. I know this crosses lines. I know what it could mean if I say this. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel something. Emily's pulse raced. Her cheeks warmed, but she forced herself to speak. Daniel, why now? Why tell me this? His shoulders sank. Because every day it gets harder to act like nothing's there. I see you walk out of this office at the end of the day, and it feels like something important is leaving with you. His voice cracked just slightly. Just enough for her to hear the truth in it. Her hands trembled in her lap. She had felt something too, though she buried it beneath professionalism and fear of what it might mean. The late nights they had shared, the quiet moments when he asked about her life, the way his eyes lingered a little too long, she remembered it all. Daniel leaned back against his desk again, his hands gripping the edge. I know this could ruin everything, he said quietly. Your job, my reputation, the balance we've kept. But I needed you to know. Emily swallowed hard. She wanted to stay calm, but her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Daniel, she whispered, not even sure what she meant to say. He looked at her with an intensity she had never seen before. Tell me I'm wrong, Emily, he said. Tell me you haven't felt it too, and I'll stop right now. I'll never bring it up again. His words hung in the air, daring her to deny what had been quietly building between them. Her chest rose and fell with quick breaths, her mind racing. She remembered the night he stayed to help her with a project, even though he didn't have to. She remembered how he asked about her younger brother's college plans, how he remembered her favorite coffee order. Small things, but they had mattered. They had made her feel seen. Emily knew the safe thing would be to deny it, to tell him it was one-sided and walk away. But the truth tugged at her heart. And the truth was harder to ignore than ever. Her lips parted, but before she could answer, Daniel's voice softened. I don't expect anything. I just couldn't keep this inside any longer. The room felt smaller, warmer, almost suffocating. The click of the closed door echoed in her memory. She hadn't realized until now that it symbolized something, his choice to let his guard down. To speak what had been locked away, Emily shifted slightly in her chair, trying to steady herself. Daniel, she said again, her voice quieter this time. This isn't easy for me either. He leaned forward, hope flickering in his eyes. So you do feel it? She looked down at her notebook, then back up at him. Her silence was enough. She didn't need to say yes for him to see the truth in her face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. Daniel's jaw tightened as if he was holding back more, but he stayed quiet. Watching her with a look that mixed relief and longing, Emily's heart ached. She knew they stood at the edge of something dangerous. But she also knew that once words like these were spoken, there was no going back. And in that dimly lit office, with the door still closed, Emily realized this was only the beginning of a story that would test both of them in ways they had never imagined. Emily sat frozen in the chair, her notebook slipping slightly from her lap. Her heart thudded so fast it almost drowned out the sound of her own breathing. Daniel stood only a few feet away, watching her like every second mattered. His words still echoed in her mind. Tell me I'm wrong, Emily. But she couldn't say he was wrong. She couldn't lie. Not when her own heart had been betraying her for months. She pushed herself to her feet slowly, her knees trembling. Why now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why are you telling me all this tonight? Daniel's expression softened, though pain lingered in his eyes. Because pretending doesn't work anymore, he said, his voice heavy with honesty. Every day I try to act normal, but then I see you smile at someone else. Or I watch you pack your bag and leave. I feel like I'm losing something I never even had. The truth in his words hit her hard. She looked at him, and for the first time she saw not her boss, but a man carrying feelings too heavy to hide. She had admired him for his strength, his steady leadership, his kindness, but now she saw vulnerability, and it shook her. Daniel, she said carefully, this isn't just about you. This affects both of us." "I know," he replied quickly, stepping closer, his voice urgent but gentle. "And I never push you into something that risks everything you've worked for. But I can't stand in this office one more day and act like you. Don't mean more to me than anyone else." Emily's hands trembled as she brushed her hair back. She thought of the small things, the way he lingered when asking about her weekend, how his eyes searched hers in meetings when she gave answers, how he always seemed to notice if she was tired or quiet. Those weren't just gestures of a boss. They were something deeper, and she had felt it too. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "I've tried to ignore it." Daniel's breath caught. His eyes widened just enough to show he hadn't expected her to admit it. "So you have felt it," he said, more statement than question. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, steadying herself. "Yes," she said finally. "I've felt it. I've noticed the way you look at me. I've noticed everything." Silence fell between them again, but this time it was charged with raw truth. Their eyes locked, neither looking away. The air felt heavy yet alive. Daniel stepped closer, slow and careful, as though giving her the choice to stop him. "Emily," he said softly, "I need to know if this is only me, or if you've been holding back too." Her lips parted, but words failed her. All she could do was let her silence speak. He read it instantly, his face showing both relief and fear of what it all meant. Her heart ached with longing, but her mind screamed with questions. What would happen if anyone found out? What if this ruined her career? Or his? What if they lost everything? But despite the risks, despite the uncertainty, one truth remained. Clear, she couldn't deny her feelings anymore. She stepped forward, closing the gap between them just slightly. "You're not the only one, Daniel," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I've been fighting it too." For a second, he just stared at her, as if he didn't believe what he had heard. Then his shoulders eased, and a breath he had been holding finally escaped. His eyes glimmered with relief, but also with something deeper, something unspoken. Emily looked down, afraid of how much power those words carried. She felt like she had just unlocked a door she couldn't close again. Daniel lowered his voice, almost a whisper. "Then we can't keep running from this." Her pulse quickened. The reality of what they were both admitting settled in the room like a storm waiting to break. She knew their lives were about to change, whether for better or worse, she couldn't tell. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same. She lifted her eyes to meet his again. And for the first time, she didn't look away. The feelings she had kept buried were now written across her face, clear as day. And Daniel, seeing it all, whispered the words that made her knees weak. "Emily, I've waited so long to hear you say that." The moment stretched between them, fragile yet unshakable, holding the weight of everything they had confessed. They didn't need more words. They both knew the line they had tiptoed around for months had finally been crossed. Emily stood so close to Daniel now that she could see every detail in his eyes, the hesitation, the hope and the fear of what they had both just admitted. Her chest rose and fell quickly, as if her body was trying to catch up with her heart. The room felt smaller, as though the walls themselves were holding their secret. She knew this was not just another conversation. It was a turning point. Daniel spoke first, his voice quiet but steady. "Emily, I don't want to make promises I can't keep. I don't want to risk your future. But I also can't go back to pretending this doesn't exist." Emily's hands trembled slightly, but she lifted her chin. "You're not the only one with something to lose," she said softly. "But hiding this forever, that would hurt more." Daniel's shoulders relaxed, and for the first time a faint smile crossed his face. Not the polite, professional smile she saw in meetings, but one that revealed relief and a flicker of happiness. "Then it's not only me," he whispered, almost in disbelief. She shook her head gently. "It's not only you." The air between them shifted again. The weight of months of unspoken feelings had finally broken, replaced by something fragile but real. Emily's heart pounded, not just with fear of the unknown, but with the thrill of knowing she was no longer alone in this. Daniel took a step closer, stopping just enough to respect the space she still held. "I don't know how this will work," he admitted. "I don't have all the answers. But I know that I don't want to keep living like this, watching you from across the office, acting like you're just another name on a report." Emily's throat tightened at his honesty. She had spent so long convincing herself she was imagining things that her feelings were one-sided. Hearing him confess the same struggle made her feel seen in a way she hadn't expected. She looked at him with steady eyes. "We don't need all the answers tonight," she said quietly. "But we can't keep pretending either. That's what hurts the most." His gaze softened. "You're right." He paused, then added with quiet certainty, "I've never admired anyone the way I admire you. Not just your work, not just your dedication. You as a person. You've become the one constant in my days." Emily's heart ached at his words. They were simple, but they carried more weight than any compliment she had ever received. For so long, she had felt like just another employee, another person trying to climb her way through work and life. But in his eyes, she was something more. She stepped closer, so close now that her hand brushed the edge of his desk. "Daniel," she said softly, "this is scary. But it's also the first time in a long time that something feels right." He let out a shaky breath, as though he had been holding it for months. "Then maybe we stop running from it." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "Maybe we do." Silence filled the room again, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was charged with the promise of something new. They both knew the risks, the whispers. If anyone found out, the challenges of blending personal feelings with professional roles. But in that moment, none of it mattered as much as the truth they had finally shared. Emily's eyes flicked to the closed door, the simple barrier between them and the world outside. Behind it, everything was ordinary colleagues, deadlines, responsibilities. But inside this room, everything had changed. Daniel noticed her glance and gave a soft laugh. "Funny how one closed door can change everything," he said. She looked back at him, her heart swelling. "It wasn't the door," she whispered. "It was the truth." His expression softened further. And for a moment, the professional mask he always wore slipped completely away. He was just a man, standing in front of a woman who had unknowingly become the center of his world. Emily didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how they would navigate the complicated path ahead. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid of the unknown. Because whatever happened, they were no longer hiding. Daniel straightened, his tone calm but certain. "No matter what comes, I'll face it with you." Her chest tightened at the weight of those words. She gave a small nod, her voice barely a whisper. "And I'll face it with you." For a long moment, they simply stood there. Two people who had crossed a line they could never step back from. But instead of regret, Emily felt a sense of peace. It wasn't the neat, easy story she once imagined for herself. It was complicated, risky, and uncertain. But it was real, and real was worth everything. When Daniel finally opened the office door, the outside world rushed back in the empty halls. The faint glow of the exit signs, the silence of a late night at work. But something inside Emily had shifted. She no longer felt like the same person who had sat typing at her desk only an hour ago. She glanced back at him as they walked out together, side by side. His eyes met hers and no words were needed. The choice had been made, and whatever came next, they would face it together. And in that quiet moment, Emily knew this was the beginning of a story she would never forget.